Industry Insiders by Goway podcast series. Hear stories from industry experts, travellers, explorers and globetrotters who will inspire you to dream bigger, explore further and discover a world you never knew. Today I'd like to I'm going to welcome myself. Normally we do interviews, but today I thought I'd recount some memories of my time as a tour guide on the road, and in particular memories of Machu Picchu with our podcast entitled Rail or Trail to Machu Picchu. The memory, the promise is clear, as is the day the thought crossed my mind. And that's saying something, as then, as now, I can barely remember yesterday. Remembering that day is not only strange, but really, when you look at the stage of my life when I had that thought, it was, let's say, an interesting time to be thinking that way. I was walking, well actually trekking, the famed Inca Trail en route to Machu Picchu for probably the 10th or 11th time. Now the reason I was at that number was, at the time, I was an overland guide for a company called Dragoman. Now Dragoman ran overland trips. Now an overland trip is travelling overland in a custom-built 22-ton truck and mainly camping, and this can happen anywhere and all over the world. From London to Cape Town, London to Kathmandu, Anchorage to Ushuaia and everywhere in between. The trip could last anywhere from 10 days to 6 months, and you would be with a group of passengers from 10 days up to 6 months. It all depended on how roughy-tufty you or the adventurer wanted to be. My job was leading those people and taking them all around the world. One of, if not the most popular trips for South America, was the Inca Heartland. That was 5 weeks from Quito in Ecuador to La Paz in Bolivia, or of course vice versa. Back in the day, and further back in the day, and to this day, a visit to Machu Picchu, perched high above the Urubamba River, which is a tributary of the Amazon River, was and is the cornerstone to anyone's trip to Peru. Now, I spent about 4 years in and around South and Central America as a guide, and much of that time was spent in and around Peru, and by extension, in and around Cusco, and by further extension, in and around the Sacred Valley, and of course, Machu Picchu. I was lucky enough to have walked the trail, the 2, 4 and 5 day, over 30 times, and to have visited the ruins probably, I'm guesstimating here, over 50 times. When not walking the trail, I was riding the rails on one of the many trains that connects the Sacred Valley to Machu Picchu. But back to that memory and promise I mentioned. So moved, impressed and in awe of Peru and the Andes and the trail, that on day 2 of the Inca Trail is when and where I had that thought. Or this thought. One day, I'd like to do this with my family. I want to show this trek and experience this with my kids. Now mind you, the thought was not always at the forefront of my mind after that, but the seed was planted. Now fast forward many, many years later, my love for Latin America remained, and I found myself opening up Latin America for Goway. In turn, my visits to the region and Peru continued, both for pleasure and for business. And of course, visits to Machu Picchu continued, as I never grew tired of the sight, and I still haven't. The promise or wish I'd made to myself all those years ago as I was climbing to Dead Woman's Pass on the trail now came into focus as I now had a family, like a real family, not just an imaginary family. I do have 3 kids, all boys affectionately known as Thing 1, Thing 2 and Thing 3, and a dog named Quito. Yes, Quito as in Quito, Ecuador, as that's where I met my wife. And yes, before you ask or surmise, she was a passenger on one of my trips. But I digress. The stars aligned and a trip to Peru, to my old stomping grounds with my now real family, was a feasible proposition. Now, apart from all the cool things we set up for other parts of Peru, dune bugging in the Peruvian desert, cooking lessons, local village visits, etc., I had to decide whether it would be rail or trail to Machu Picchu. The kids were of an age, 7, 10 and 12, and the youngest is an asthma sufferer, so we needed to be realistic in expectations of taking kids on a 42-kilometre, 26-mile hike in the Andes. If they were not happy, we would not be happy, and you don't want unhappy kids on a holiday. Now, to be honest, it was a quick and easy decision. I had youthful memories of multiple treks. My wife had walked the trail herself, plus climbed mountains in the Himalayas, and she had summited Kilimanjaro. And the kids, well, they were kids. They all played hockey and sport and were fit enough. So, trail it was. Now that worked for us, but would it work for you? While Machu Picchu is one of the world's most famous archaeological sites, the journey to the ruins and the many options to get there can sometimes be confusing. Located in a valley, Cusco, the ancient capital of the Inca Empire, is approximately 112 kilometers, about 70 miles from Machu Picchu itself. To reach the ruins, you travel by a road from Cusco to a town called Ollantaytambo, a living Inca town, and it's also the trailhead for the classic Inca. If you're taking the train to Machu Picchu, you would take the road transfer into Ollantaytambo, but here instead of starting the trail in Ollantaytambo, you would board the train that takes you into Machu Picchu. You cannot reach Machu Picchu by road alone, so it's rail or trail. Between Cusco and Machu Picchu is an area known as the Sacred Valley. Now, within this region are many of the famous towns and ruins we suggest you visit en route to the ruins of Machu Picchu. Those being Chincheros, Pisac, Ollantaytambo itself, Moroi, Maras, just to name a few. This time spent visiting in and around the Sacred Valley also assists in climatizing to the altitude in Machu Picchu, whether you're doing it rail or trail. For all our trips to Machu Picchu, we suggest you add a Cusco city tour combined with the Sacred Valley tour, not only for acclimatization purposes, but of course to see the stunning history of the valley and the region. But now let's go through the different considerations of rail or trail to Machu Picchu. Let's start with the trail. Good news, bad news, and then some good news. The good news. A very important but overlooked fact is that Machu Picchu is actually lower in altitude than Cusco. Cusco is roughly 3,200 meters or 10,500 feet, and Machu Picchu is at 2,400 meters or 7,900 feet. But the bad news is the highest point of the trail is 4,200 meters or about 13,800 feet. That other good news is you're only at that height for no more than 20 meters or about 60 feet before you head back down into the valley. So, acclimatization is key to walking in the trail, but no matter how much or how long you spend at altitude, you may be hit with altitude sickness, and if you do get hit with it, it is probably on the second day of the trail. The best way to acclimatize is to spend some time in and around Cusco and the Sacred Valley, as mentioned. Ideally, 2 full days in Cusco and 2 or 3 days ideally exploring the Sacred Valley. So, let me give you a summary of the Inca Trail from a physical challenge point of view. Now note, these references are all relative to walking in the Andes, in a mountain range. Day 1 is the easiest. You walk alongside the river for most of the day with only very slight inclines. You then turn left and head up into the valley, gaining a little bit of altitude where you'll camp for the first night. Now again, remember, you would have taken a road transfer, visiting the Sacred Valley, ended up at Ollantaytambo, where you're driven just a little bit further down the valley where you begin the trail. Day 1, easiest. Day 2 is the hardest. This is the day you hit 4,200 meters or 13,800 feet at Dead Woman's Pass. In the First Nation people's language, the descendants of the Incas, it is called Wami Wanyuska. The language is called Quechua and was the language of the Incas. Now, in all my treks, no guide or local could tell me why it's named that, as in Dead Woman's Pass. General opinion is, however, the name came about due to the silhouette of the mountain. If you look closely, you can see the profile of a woman lying on top of the Andes. Why she had to be dead, I don't know. But hey, that's what it's called, Dead Woman's Pass. Day 2, the hardest. Day 3 is the longest. Now on day 3 you hit the second and third passes, which are at a lower altitude than Dead Woman's Pass. The second pass is, however, a short, sharp challenge up first thing in the morning. But then it's a relatively smooth flowing up and down along the ridgeline. Now remember that word, relative. Until you have lunch at the third pass, and then it's down, down, and more down to the last campsite. Now, while day 2 is tough with up, up, up to Devilman's Pass. It is more of a mental challenge with seeing the destination way off in the distance and possibly battling some altitude issues. Day 3, however, is more physically demanding in my view due to the down, 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 down. Get down, deeper and down, 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 deeper and down, 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 deeper. Down, and that is the pressure on the knees and the thighs. Day 4 is the shortest. From Camp 3 to the famed Sun Gate is anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour, easy walking, and there you are, looking down on Machu Picchu. Here is an expert inside scoop. The only way to get the classic view of Machu Picchu is from the Sun Gate. The only way to get to the Sun Gate is to walk the trail or enter Machu Picchu and then walk through the ruins and up to the Sun Gate. It's only by walking the trail that you get that virgin view of the ruins, that wow moment. But a word of warning, and all the times I did the trail, did the walk, only once did I get to the Sun Gate and see Machu Picchu without any cloud cover. Usually you arrive at the Sun Gate and the ruins are shrouded in mist and cloud. So why would they be covered in cloud most of the time? Well, you aim to arrive at the Sun Gate for sunrise, and as you are in the mountains, you get early morning mountain weather, which regardless of what time of the year you are there, is usually mist and cloud. Now I always found it mildly amusing arriving with a group at the Sun Gate to hear their disappointment of not seeing Machu Picchu. Globetrotters had dreamt of this sight, this moment, this feeling for months, years, or even decades, and they just spent 4 days challenging themselves mentally and physically, some digging very deep to get there. In fact, I had one woman from New York who on day 2 became completely delirious from altitude sickness. She had no idea where she was, and I walked with her, got her to the top of Dead Woman's Pass, grabbed her camera from her bag and took a picture of her at the Dead Woman's Pass sign at the top, then shepherded her down into the valley. Within 15 minutes of getting to a lower altitude, she came out of her stupor and away she went. However, she didn't remember anything of the climb up. So, some people do dig deep to get there. But here they are, standing at the literal precipice of a lifelong dream, and they're disappointed. Disappointed in they've come all this way and they can't see it. I always quietly laugh to myself. But then, the reward. For me as their guide and for them. Mother Nature puts on a show, and as the sun comes up, the heat slowly burns off the mist, or the winds move the clouds away, and tiny glimpses of the ruins are seen. You hear the ooh, the ahs, as Machu Picchu is revealed as if a curtain is drawn back, and every time it leaves a mark. It can be the simple mark of that tick on the list of places to go and to be seen, but usually it is a mark on the soul, on the psyche, on the emotions. No one I know has left from that Sun Gate not impressed. Now you head down and, as I term it, enter Machu Picchu by the back door. Due to regulations, you walk through the ruins, there's no real dawdling, to the main entrance, where you gather and then re-enter for your official guided tour with your lead guide who has been with you on the actual Inca Trail. After that, you'll have a short period of free time, but in reality, the past 4 days have caught up and most just want to head to the hotel in the valley below in Aguascalientes, which they do, where you rest, eat, drink, chill in the hot springs and or shop, or just sleep in the bed. Now day 5 is when we recommend going to Machu Picchu for a second visit. In your own time, at your own pace, seeing what you want to see. Now that could be climbing Huayna Picchu, climbing Machu Picchu Mountain, both of these need to be pre-booked, walking back up to the Sun Gate or around the corner to the Inca Bridge, or just sitting and contemplating. It's your call, it's your time. Now it's worth pointing out, rail or trail, entrances to Machu Picchu work in 2 sessions, morning and afternoon, and each session requires an individual paid-for entrance ticket. Now we could spend 30 minutes talking about the regulations to visit Machu Picchu, but that will be for another day. Some other things to be aware of trailing it to Machu Picchu. You will have a guide with you from the start to finish on day 4. Day 5, the guide will not be there, but once you've entered Machu Picchu, you know how it works. It's very easy to get back up there and spend that day 5 at your own leisure. You will have a cook and porters, which means you carry nothing but a day pack during the day. All tents are put up, they're all taken down, and it's all done by the porter team. You just simply walk, eat, and enjoy. The food is amazing and plentiful, and they can cater for pretty much everything except kosher. And the only reason kosher is not normally catered for is that it would necessitate bringing a second set of cooking gear, and as weight is a premium, that becomes an issue, though it could be discussed if it is a deal breaker. There is a luxury Inca Trail option, so it's the same trail, same heights, same length, but the tents are a bit bigger and you get a camp cot bed versus sleeping on thermarest. So that's something worth considering if you want a little bit of comfort on your Inca Trail walk. Tipping is recommended at the end of the trip for the guide and all porters. Never have I ever had anyone not see tipping as warranted, but as always, it is a personal choice. Now, before we move on to the rail option, there is an alternative trek to Machu Picchu called the Salcantay Trek. And there are three main differences here between the Salcantay and the classic Inca Trail. The Salcantay Trek follows a much less travelled route, taking the trekker through more rural settings but equally magnificent views of the Andes and retracing a multitude of traditional Inca trails. Your arrival into Machu Picchu is through the back door, which then requires the trekker to walk into the valley below, catch a train to Aguascalientes, which is the town below the ruins, and then enter the ruins proper by the main gate on the next day. So what this means is that on the Salcantay Trek, you arrive further down the valley and you see Machu Picchu from the rear, so to speak. And that's when you go down into the valley, take the train back up the valley just a little bit to Aguascalientes, where you overnight and then enter Machu Picchu with the hordes on the morning of the next day. So that's the main difference, in that the classic Inca Trail has you arrive on the morning of day 4 via the Sun Gate. The Salcantay does not offer that. Now, the Salcantay is no less challenging than the classic version of the Inca Trail, but it offers a more remote and tranquil option in reaching Machu Picchu. It is also a similar length, roughly 40 kilometers or 23 miles. It is relatively, there's that word again, relatively smoother up and down compared to the classic Inca Trail, which is much more steep up and down. On the Salcantay Trek, you can camp, but there is a lodge-to-lodge option. So each night you are inside, in a bed, sipping red wine, with access to showers, and in the high season even massages, and it's a much more civilized option. And again, this trek does not lead to the Sun Gate. You arrive, as mentioned, a little further down the valley from Machu Picchu. You do see Machu Picchu in the distance. You then have to trek into the valley, catch the train up, and then enter Machu Picchu the following day. Now, the easy and faster way to get to Machu Picchu is, of course, rail. Previously, journeys to and from Machu Picchu by train started and finished in Cusco, the main rail terminal. Now, the train line from here runs through literally the backyards of residents of suburban Cusco, and due to the frequency of trains to and from Machu Picchu, changes were made to lessen the noise, pollution and intrusion into the locals' daily lives. As such, the start-finish point for train journeys into Machu Picchu was moved to a town just outside of Cusco called Puroy. If choosing a train-only option with no touring in the Sacred Valley, you would be picked up from your hotel in Cusco early in the morning and transferred by road approximately 20 minutes to the town of Puroy, just outside Cusco as mentioned. Your guide for the day would usually accompany you from Cusco, but may meet you at Aguascalientes. From here, Puroy, you travel down through the Sacred Valley by train, ending in the town of Aguascalientes. And this town is actually slowly being renamed Machu Picchu Pueblo, but this is the town below the ruins in the valley. Aguascalientes, or Machu Picchu Pueblo, is located in the valley floor and is only a short hop from the ruins themselves, and it's a major hub of activity with many choices of hotels from 3 to 5 star, restaurants, hot springs, nightlife, clubs, shopping. This is why I recommend, when we are talking the trail, why most people head here on the afternoon of their arrival into Machu Picchu, because there's so much to see and do. Now, back to the rail. After disembarking your train in Aguascalientes, you take a short walk with your guide to where the buses run to and from Machu Picchu. If you are overnighting Aguascalientes, your luggage will be taken to your chosen hotel. Now the buses I just mentioned, this is the only road transport. There's one road servicing people going to and from Aguas Calientes to Machu Picchu. That's all it is, just one road for the buses to get you to and from. The bus ride from Aguas Calientes up to the ruins takes approximately 20 minutes in either direction. On arrival at the ruins of Machu Picchu, it is a literal 2-minute walk to the main entrance. Now, where the main entrance is also where the famed Sanctuary Lodge, a Belmont hotel, is located. So there is only one hotel option at the ruins for Machu Picchu, and it is literally a stone's throw from the main entrance. So, if this option is looked at, be it a trail or rail option, beautiful hotel, but during the day it's manically busy because everyone's going in and out of the entrance of Machu Picchu. The word sanctuary comes into play when the ruins close at the end of the day. There is no one up there except guests of the hotel and the ruins themselves. So that's where the name Sanctuary Lodge comes from, and that's when you really appreciate its location. Staying at the Sanctuary Lodge, however, will not get you in to the ruins any earlier or allow you to stay any later. Generally speaking, we recommend accommodation down in Aguas Calientes because there is so much more to do and see. However, if people are looking for that quiet experience at night, Sanctuary Lodge is the way to go. Then, once arriving at Machu Picchu from Aguas Calientes, you enjoy your guided tour of Machu Picchu. The first visit to Machu Picchu, be it rail or trail, must be guided. You can opt for a very early departure from Cusco to enjoy Machu Picchu on a morning. So as mentioned, there are 2 entrance tickets for Machu Picchu, a morning and afternoon. So if you're looking at rail directly from Cusco, you can leave very, very early in the morning from Cusco to arrive at Machu Picchu for a morning visit. And if you wish to stay and re-enter in the afternoon, remembering the first visit must be guided, you must come out after your morning visit. Yep, lots of red tape, but it's to control the amount of people who visit the ruins and to try and keep it as safe and well conditioned as possible. So you would enter the ruins in the morning on a guided tour, rail or trail, and then if we're talking rail, you can re-enter in the afternoon for time on your own, or you can leave from Cusco a little bit later and just do an afternoon visit, guided tour of Machu Picchu. At the end of the day's touring, you then return back to Aguas Calientes, assuming you're staying in the valley. If not, you can literally walk to the Sanctuary Lodge if that's your chosen hotel. And then you can spend time in Aguas Calientes that night doing everything I mentioned before. Your bags will be waiting for you at your hotel. Now, day 2, as with the trail option, the second day is usually left open to the Globetrotter to explore their own pace. So going back to the rail option, I mentioned if you want to do it all in one day, you can. Leave Cusco very early, do a morning and afternoon visit. We, however, don't recommend that. What we would suggest is you leave Cusco at a more decent hour, arrive for an afternoon guided tour of Machu Picchu on day 1, overnight, then on day 2, return for a morning visit at your leisure. Okay? So those who don't do the trail on the second day may want to now look at or consider summiting Huayna Picchu. Now that is the famous peak that sits behind the main ruins, which you'll see in all the main photos. It's a somewhat easy but very steep climb, and it only has 2 departure times in the morning, and as mentioned before, it must be pre-booked. Okay, so when you do that climb, you sign in, and when you return, you sign out. Again, easy climb, but it is very, very steep. So if anyone has height issues, this may be worth discussing with one of our destination experts. So on the second day, now this also applies for anyone who's trailed it. So this would day 2 for the rails, we're talking now, day 5 for the trailers. The buses leave Aguas Calientes from about 5:30 in the morning, so you can easily get up to the main ruins for when the doors open at 8 o'clock. Now the buses don't run to a schedule, but leave when full. The time you depart on day 2 for your second visit is entirely up to you, but again, we do recommend an early departure to allow time within the ruins to either walk to the Sun Gate if you've not done it, or climb Huayna Picchu, or climb Machu Picchu Mountain, or walk to the Inca Bridge, or simply spend time walking around the ruins and or sitting and contemplating. Again, reminding you, 2 entrances, morning and afternoon, and each entrance is time limited. It's like 4 hours in the morning, there's an hour break at lunchtime, then there's 4 hours in the afternoon, so you cannot stay longer than those designated times. Now, based on your departure time, as in your train from Aguascalientes back to Cusco, you then hop on your bus, go back down to Aguascalientes, check out of your hotel, head to the train station and board your train. Now, trains back to Cusco depart anywhere from 1:30 to 9:30 p.m. Remember, the train journey back terminates in Puroy, the town just outside Cusco, but we recommend getting off in Ollantaytambo, where the trail starts, where many people will pick up the train to visit Machu Picchu because they would have visited the Sacred Valley before. And then taking a road transfer back from Ollantaytambo to Cusco. This is often faster than staying on the train. You're then back somewhat early in Cusco for a nice meal, beer and or wine in celebration of witnessing one of the modern wonders of the world in Machu Picchu. Now, there is one rail track to and from Machu Picchu from Cusco, Puroy or Ollantaytambo. But on this track run two types of trains. You have the Vista Dome, which is reserved seating, room for a small to medium-sized day pack, and snacks for sale. The train has glass ceiling so you can see the valley walls as you head down or out of the valley. The second option, well, the second most popular option, is the Hiram Bingham. This is a Belmont train. It's a classic colonial style train with reserved seating, more space, included meals, albeit basic, room for a small medium-sized day pack, a bar car and a viewing car. Now, an expert tip. As mentioned, both trains run the same tracks, but the Hiram Bingham is most definitely the more luxurious and in turn more expensive option. But it does offer some better views due to the viewing car and luxury appointments. But most people return from Machu Picchu in the mid to late afternoon. Daylight ends around 6 p.m. on average, but it gets darker even quicker being in the valleys of the Andes. All this goes to say that you lose the viewing advantage on the return trip. So our expert tip is take the Hiram Bingham down and take the Vista Dome back. With rail options, you can visit Machu Picchu in a day, as we mentioned before, be it from the Sacred Valley or Cusco. Now, we don't recommend it. It's too rushed to see such an amazing sight. The perfect time, talking rail, is 2 days. 1 day on the organized guided tour and day 2 at your leisure as you wish. Now, summing up the trail options, you have the 4-day trek. This is where you visit Machu Picchu on the morning of day 4 and return to Cusco on that day, day 4. Again, not recommended because you've only seen the ruins for a short 4 hours on a guided tour just after walking 4 days and you are a little bit tired. Add that extra day to appreciate the ruins, unwind from the 4-day physical challenge and then explore at your leisure, which equals the 5-day trek. So it's simply adding that extra day and extra visit to Machu Picchu is a 5-day trek. You then have the 5 to 7 day Salcantay trek. This can be lodge to lodge or it can be camping, but either way, you do not arrive into Machu Picchu via the Sun Gate. You arrive with views of Machu Picchu in the distance. You then trek to the valley floor, train up to Aguascalientes overnight, and then you visit the ruins the next day via bus with the hordes and the masses. If you want the best of both worlds and are short on time, then you can look at the Baby Inca Trail. So what you do is you take the train from Ollantaytambo further down the valley, hop off at the hydroelectric dam, which is close to Machu Picchu. You then walk up the valley floor, connecting with the standard classic 4-day Inca Trail at the site of the third night campsite, which is a set of ruins called Wiña. However, the Baby Inca Trailers do not stop or camp here. They walk through this campsite to the Sun Gate, arriving at the Sun Gate lunchtime to early afternoon. So the Baby Inca Trail is much shorter. It offers a physical challenge and a chance to enter the ruins of Machu Picchu through the famous Sun Gate, however, not at sunrise. It's only about 15 kilometers in length and it's relatively easy, offering great views of the valley and then Machu Picchu itself. Then you would overnight, be it at the Sanctuary Lodge or in Aguascalientes, and return on day 2 to do what we always recommend, a self-guided tour around the ruins before returning to Cusco. So, is it rail or trail to Machu Picchu for you? If you consider the trail, you need to have a moderate level of fitness and accept that you'll be walking anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours a day at altitude. You will camp, be it on thermarests or cot beds, and you won't shower for 3 nights. You'll be well fed, extremely well guided, and gain a much better insight and understanding of the Inca Empire as you stop at the many ruins on the way along the Inca Trail. And that's something I didn't mention. The trail itself is dotted with many Incan ruins, and you and your group and your guide will stop and have conversations, discussions about the ruins themselves and the Incan Empire, history and culture. If you want a challenge, the challenge to walk the royal pathways the Incas once did, see the many hidden ruins en route, spectacular scenery, to have an experience that will, guaranteed, last a lifetime, then trail it is. It just has to be. So for myself and my family, as mentioned, we chose the trail. And again, how could it not be? I had spoken so often about my treks to my kids, and I had so much wanted to be with them when they did it. I also had to show them that the old man still had it. Now the latter was a close call. My knees are not what they used to be, and my little guy is 7, the asthmatic, was literally running up the hills and coming back. The porter called him a mountain goat, and lamenting on why Mum and Dad were walking so slowly. I was pleading with my knees not to embarrass me in front of my kids. His older brothers were ahead, taking pictures, relaxing, or patting the ubiquitous llamas, while Dad, now I won't speak for my wife, had his memories playing tricks on him as I'd forgotten some of the harder parts of the trail that my 20-year-old brain and body had easily conquered. It was the downhill that hurt the 50-year-old body, and surprisingly not the dreaded trek to Dead Woman's Pass. I've always been lucky with not suffering from altitude sickness, so that didn't come into play, but I think this time, having my boys around me, literally buzzing 1 minute there, the next off in the distance, put any mental or physical interruptions aside, and I powered on up Dead Woman's Pass. In fact, reaching the highest point of the trail that day, on this 18th Inca Trail, actually came to represent one of, if not, the highest point in all my travel experiences. Now that's a big statement, as I've been blessed and continue to do so to travel extensively. Thing 2 and Thing 3, that's my middle and youngest, waited for Mum and Dad to reach Dead Woman's Pass, and they scurried off down into the valley. Our oldest boy, Thing 1, was actually behind me as I reached the 4,200 metre point of the Dead Woman's Pass summit. So I was waiting there for him when he reached the top. When he arrived, and without prompting or urging from either of us, we fell into each other's arms and had a little hug and cry. Bless my wife as she captured the moment in a picture proudly hanging in our home, a moment she and I shared and understand the meaning of. I can't speak for him for what he was feeling, but I know what I was feeling. True gratitude for the many opportunities that life has given me, the challenge undertaken and completed, admittedly we were only halfway, but you know what I mean, and the love and respect my son showed me, and the love of and from my family. But I think deep down, and while not conscious of it at the time, it was the fact that I was able to fulfill that promise made so many years ago to an idea, to a family yet known, and I was able to do so literally at and on the spot that I made that promise. Travel is simply the best. Machu Picchu is the best, whether you arrive by rail or trail. This was an overview of Machu Picchu and how to get there. There are many more aspects, options and variables that come into play. For all that information, please reach out to one of the excellent Latin destination specialists here at Goway, and as always, thank you very much for your time today. Have a good one.